Now it's my great honor to bring in the distinguished composer and multimedia performer, Pamela Z. Pamela, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Pamela, Voices of Silicon Valley, we're very happy to see you attending the Stimmung performances. Why did you come? Tell us.
Well, when I first received the email posting about it, I was entirely unfamiliar with the group. And the event was taking place in Mountain View, so it was going to require me to make a 40-minute drive all the way to the South Bay. But I love this vocal work of Stockhausen's, and I had never had an opportunity to hear it performed live before. Um, So, and it was my understanding that before Voices of Silicon Valley's performances, that there had been no Bay Area performances of this work since, like, I don't know, 1974. Is that right?
I think 1980s. There was a Los Angeles group that did it in 1980s.
In the
And
in 1980s.
yeah,
But anyway, so this was, in a sense, a very important event. Um, and I thought that the ensemble performed the work so beautifully and in a manner that to me seemed to be very true to the intentions of the composer. So I was so taken with this performance that I attended Voices of Silicon Valley's concert again when they performed it in in San Francisco at the. I think I didn't know they were going to do that at the time that I went to Mountain View to see them, but they performed it again at the conservatory. Not too much later, I don't think, and then so I was able to come and hear it again, and I was very thrilled to have a second opportunity to hear it. And now I'm really looking forward with just great anticipation to get my hands on and hear the recording that we're celebrating here.
That's fantastic. I mean, part of the reason it was so successful, Cyril, is because you got to work with Collegium Vocale Köln, the original Stockhausen group. How did that come to be?
how that come to be. This is a very interesting story. There is something magical about Stimmung. The way it happened for me is in 2012 and then in 2015, I went to Paris for the summer academy at IRCAM, Institute for Research in Acoustic and Electronic Music.
Mhm.
And at that time, I got interested in spectral school of composition, work of Gerard Grisey and Tristan Rai. And as I began reading about their work, I learned that Stockhausen and particularly Stimmung was very influential, that Grisey heard Stockhausen presentation about Stimmung in Darmstadt. And then people saw Grisey walking around the halls and singing overtones because he was so inspired. And I thought, that's very cool. And so that's how I got interested in Stimmung. And then I realized that's right, that this work that is so important for contemporary music has not been performed in Bay Area in 3 decades. And then, so that's how we became interested. And then I learned why, because it's so difficult and it requires so much time. So now we
Well,
understand.
I'm wondering. I mean, I've never had the privilege of performing a work like that in any of the choral organizations that I've ever performed with. So I'm extremely curious what it's like to prepare and perform this music. I know the work relies quite heavily on the production of vocal
Yeah.
harmonics, and I'm Cyril. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what was needed to prepare the singers for this technique, and were they already familiar with working this way, or did you have to kind of start from scratch and developing the technique with them?
Yeah, we pretty much had to start from scratch. Singing of overtones is not something that's taught very often. So for our singers, even many of them are, advanced, and some of them sing opera. So there were different challenges. Some of them had to learn to sing with straight tone to make the overtones. Thankfully, if you look into the edition of the Paris version, there are some points there, how to make harmonics. There is a vowel chart there, and so you learn to sing the overtones by going through the vowels, from u to I. You learn to do that by going through the vowel chart. and that took a while to first to do that before we could actually begin to sing, the work. And then, of course, the whole play of one model singer, one lead singer in each section, passing passing the baton, so to speak, to others. So that's the other thing that Stimmung is known for, is the rhythmic polyphony that is created by this many layers. So there's 51 sections.
Yeah.
In each section, one singer is the lead singer who introduces the new model, while others are still staying on previous models. So there's this amazing polyphony, and by the end of a section, they're supposed to come in unison on everything. So this takes a long time. Yeah.
So there must have just been night after night of rehearsing just to find that.
Yes, unfortunately, we could not. What I read about Collegium Vocale Köln is that they spent, I believe, a week in isolation before the first performance.
Oh, you mean each time when they're preparing?
No, that I'm not sure. No, it was probably before the very first one.
Right.
And then because they were doing the work for years and years and years.
And Stimmung, being in just intonation, I'm curious if it was challenging for the ensemble to do the tuning, so to speak, necessary to produce those pitches accurately. Do you think it's the overtones themselves that guide the singers to tuning these pitches?
That's a big part, but I'll tell you this. So the two performances, we had a different rehearsal venue the first time when we did it in 2017, and then the second time before the San Francisco Conservatory concert. And the first rehearsal venue, we were in a very live, resonant room, but at the same time, it wasn't very large. It was rather small, but resonant room. And there were moments when we began hearing those overtones. Those moments are magical. I mean, I just can't describe the feeling. So there were magical moments there in working on this piece. But I was curious, Pamela. Now, what does it mean to you? What does Stimmung mean to you in terms of its place in contemporary music, modern music?
Well, I mean, I just love the sound of the work, and I love all those textures. And I'm not sure there was much in the canon of Western classical music that employed these kind of techniques at all, at the time that Stockhausen made this work. So, there's a lot of cultures in which we have this kind of singing. In like a lot of Asian cultures, some Northern European cultures, some North American indigenous people. But it was quite striking to find it in this music, and I also just there's so much vocal music, like choral music, that is kind of tired in its approach, and just or like reliant on really conventional ways of using Western music chorus, and so I just find the work to be just really, it just very, very, very individual.
Absolutely.
There's not a whole canon of work that sounds like that out there. So that's
absolutely. And the fact that you just mentioned that, to me, that's exactly right. And I think that's why all these different cultures, religions that Stockhausen brings, through using all these gods and goddesses from Native Americans to, a god from India or Africa, that exactly makes sense, because he's using the techniques, the vocal techniques that resonate with those cultures, and then he's actually bringing the religious traditions here. And
there's so much in Western classical music and choral music that's all about sort of Christian, Judeo-Christian or mainly, Christian kind of foundation. And so I mean, my thought is why not like expand to a view that's more inclusive of of the world,
Yeah, exactly. And the idea exactly, but that connection between technical side of it
Hmm.
and philosophical side of it, it's truly amazing. And this philosophical side, bringing together so many religious traditions, is something
Hmm.
that's very important to me. And I think it's someone told me, this is just written for Bay Area, for what we have here. People from all over the world, all religions. This is just perfect for us.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's the earthly and also beyond earth, the metaphysical properties that
yeah,
Stockhausen was really interested in. He called it the winged vehicle, voyaging through the cosmos and the divine.
yeah, exactly. And I'm beginning to realize more how much this philosophical approach influenced me in my work.
Mm.
So now I'm working on a piece that has music from India, and it has audio examples from Russian Znamena chant,
Mhm.
and a Muslim prayer, and it's just and then I realized that working on Stockhausen has influenced me on a deep level. You know,
Well, I think also just sonically, it really celebrates the resonant. There's a for 10 years, I think there's been a vocal contemporary music festival in New York called Resonant Bodies. And this piece is really about resonant bodies, um, and just, generating these unearthly sounds just because of the way that the bodies that are producing them resonate, So, um, so
and
I
right,
love
you
that.
attended right, and you attended performance in Mountain View, which
Hmm.
is so far the only one that we were able to do outside, outdoors.
Hmm.
We'd like to do it again
Yeah.
because it was just so right. It felt
Well, speaking of that, so the piece, it's intentionally amplified,
right.
um, which I think makes it, in a way, lends it more to being able to be performed outdoors, because
Mhm.
you can't, when you're outdoors, you can't rely on the resonance of a particular room.
Right.
Um, but when you can close mic voices, there's all kinds of little intimate things that happen that maybe wouldn't be so audible to the audience unless the space that they were in was such a perfect space that
Right.
all of those little subtle things could be picked up and amplified by the resonance of the room itself. Um, so I think that Stockhausen was really smart to include amplification as, as a sort of a fundamental part of what performing that work involves.
Absolutely. Right. You cannot do it without microphones. It would not be right without
Hmm.
microphones and speakers. Yeah. So
When you rehearsed it, did you start with mics, or did you rehearse a lot without mics first?
at first we rehearsed without mics.
Hmm.
So mics came later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is so much to learn in the piece, and after you practice the overtones, it's different models and all the mechanics and all the dynamics that happen. As apparently the first version of Stimmung did not have that strict order of models.
Oh, is that
Um,
right?
a model singer could just pass, with a gesture, he could pass the baton to anyone.
Hmm.
And then Collegium Vocale, they themselves created the Paris version that we
Ah.
recorded,
Hmm.
where it's very strict how they spelled out the sequence of models.
Hmm.
And they said, and if you read it, at the edition of the piece, the Paris version with Universal, Wolfgang Fromm, he talks about that. He says how they came to that decision and why, how
Hmm.
they spaced out the magic names, how they decided to do it. Uh,
Okay.
they themselves said that to do a free version became impractical. It wasn't right. So
So tell me about recording this. What was how did that differ, if at all, from doing a live performance? Was it just performed straight through, but just in a studio, or was there something special about how you went
actually,
about recording it?
Actually, this recording on Orpheus label that we're releasing is live from the live performance.
Oh, which one, from the conservatory or?
From the conservatory, yes.
Ah, well,
Yeah,
the sound was good in that room.
it was.
So,
It was small enough.
yeah.
But you know, we're looking at other possibilities, hopefully to do it again, to record it again. Everybody
really?
in our group wants to do it again. It's just
Yeah.
incredible experience. So,
Well,
thank you so much, Pamela. It's
Thank
been
you,
wonderful
Pamela.
to.
Thank you, Cyril. This is an amazing discussion. I want it to go on all night. We're so glad to have both of you. You're both amazing. Thank you.
well, thank you for inviting me to join you tonight.
Thank you.